The Galactic Council Chamber stretched vast and gleaming under artificial stars that mimicked a dozen different home-world skies. Ambassador Park Ji-woo stood at the presentation platform, her hands steady despite the weight of what this meeting meant for Earth. Around her, representatives from 47 different species filled the tiered seating, their forms ranging from insectoid to reptilian to things that defied easy classification. Honored counselors, Park began, her voice carrying through the translation matrix. Earth requests consideration for military partnership status within the Galactic Council. A ripple of clicking sounds came from the insectoid section. Counselor Vexter, whose species had held military dominance for 3 centuries, raised one of his forearms. Ambassador Park, we have reviewed your world specifications. Vexter's translated voice held barely concealed amusement. Your planet's gravity is unremarkable. Your species' physical capabilities are frankly underwhelming. What exactly qualifies Earth for military partnership? Park had expected this. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show Earth's biosphere data. Earth is classified as a death world, Counselor. Our evolutionary environment has produced resilient, adaptable survivors. Our predator species demonstrate exceptional. Laughter erupted from multiple sections of the chamber. Predators? A counselor from the Thax Collective, whose homeworld boasted creatures the size of frigates, stood. Ambassador, your largest land predator weighs less than our agricultural livestock. More laughter. Park felt Captain Kan Min-seo tense beside her, but she remained calm. She changed the display to show various Earth predators: lions, tigers, bears, sharks. Impressive for a garden world, Vexter said dismissively, but hardly relevant to modern warfare. Size matters, Ambassador. Strength matters. Your species evolved from small primates. You lack the physical dominance necessary for, what about efficiency? Dr. Lee Hai-jin interrupted from her position behind Park. The xenobiologist stepped forward. Counselors, may I demonstrate something? Park nodded, and Lee activated a new file. The hologram showed a stocky, dark-furred creature moving through snow. This is a wolverine, Lee explained. It weighs perhaps 15 kilograms. Yet it regularly kills prey 5 to 10 times its size. It drives bears creatures 50 times its mass away from food. It never surrenders territory. It never stops hunting. A curious anomaly, Vexter said, but his tone had shifted slightly. Still, we are discussing military capability, not wildlife curiosities. The wolverine represents a principle, Park said firmly. Pound-for-pound lethality, relentless determination, refusal to yield regardless of opponent size. These traits define Earth's predators. They also define humanity. The chamber fell quieter, but the skepticism remained palpable. Your philosophical arguments are noted, Ambassador, Vexter said. However, the Council requires practical demonstrations of capability. Your military forces have no combat record against galactic standard threats. Your technology is adequate but unremarkable. Your physical specifications place us below minimum combat effectiveness standards. Park finished. Yes, we've read your preliminary assessment. Then you understand our decision. Vexter settled back into his seat. Earth's application for military partnership is denied. You may reapply in 50 standard years, provided your species advances sufficiently. This council recognizes Earth as a commercial partner only. Captain Kang couldn't contain himself. You're making a mistake, Counselor. Our species has survived ice ages, plagues, global conflicts. We've overcome circumstances common to most developing worlds. Vexter interrupted. You've done well for primitives, Captain, but the galactic stage requires more. Know your place. The words hung in the air like a slap. Park placed a restraining hand on Kang's arm. "We thank the Council for their consideration," she said with rigid politeness. "Earth will respect your decision." As the human delegation gathered their materials to leave, alarms suddenly shrieked through the chamber. Counselors jerked upright, their attention snapping to emergency displays that materialized in the air. "What's happening?" Park asked the nearest aide, a young Thaxian. "Border attack," the aide whispered, eyes wide. "The Krell Dominion just hit 3 colony worlds simultaneously." The chamber erupted into chaos. The Krell Dominion was known to everyone, a brutal, expansionist empire that had been quiet for decades. If they were moving again, it meant war. Vexter was shouting orders, coordinating with military commanders through his neural link. Other counselors scrambled to contact their home fleets. The carefully maintained order of the chamber dissolved into panic. Park watched for a moment, then approached Vexter's platform. "Counselor, Earth has rapid response forces that could—" "This is not your concern." "Human," Vexter didn't even look at her. "Return to your world. The Council will handle this. But we have specialized units trained in—" I said no. Now Vexter did look at her, his compound eyes glittering. "We do not need help from a species whose predators are smaller than our livestock. Go home, Ambassador Park. Leave warfare to those bred for it." Captain Kang pulled Park away before she could respond. Dr. Lee followed them toward the exit, her face tight with anger. "Arrogant fools," Kang muttered. "They're going to get slaughtered." "Perhaps," Park said quietly, watching the continued chaos. "Or perhaps they'll succeed and prove themselves right about us. And if they don't succeed," Lee asked. Park's expression hardened. "Then they'll learn what we tried to tell them. That size isn't everything. That Earth's predators are dangerous precisely because they don't quit." They left the chamber as more alarms sounded. Behind them, the Galactic Council mobilized for war, confident in their superior strength and numbers. They had fought wars for millennia. They had warriors bred specifically for combat. They had technology refined over thousands of years. What they didn't have was experience with an enemy that truly wouldn't stop. What they didn't understand was the principle the Wolverine embodied. The trait that made it so dangerous despite its size. They didn't understand. Persistence. They would learn. The human delegation shuttle lifted from the council station 3 hours later. Park sat in silence, reviewing reports of the Krell attacks. The enemy was moving fast, using overwhelming numbers and brutal efficiency. Council forces were scrambling to respond. "Ma'am," Kang said from the pilot's seat, "are we really just going home?" Park looked up from her datapad. In the reflection of the viewport, she could see Earth in the distance, a blue marble that had spawned humanity and countless predators that should have been too small, too weak to survive. But they had survived. They had thrived. They had conquered a harsh world through sheer refusal to give up. "No, Captain," Park said softly. "We're going to prepare. Because when they finally realize they need us, we're going to show them exactly what Earth's predators can do." She pulled up a file on her datapad. Military readiness. Reports for a specialized unit that had trained for years in the harshest environments Earth offered. A unit whose soldiers studied the Wolverine's tactics, adopted its mentality, embodied its spirit. A unit called the Wolverine Corps. "Get me Commander Choi," Park ordered. "Tell him to ready his people. I suspect we'll be receiving a call soon." Outside the viewport, the stars gleamed cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, the Krell Dominion was advancing. And somewhere on Earth, soldiers who had learned from the galaxy's most relentless predators were preparing to show the universe what true persistence meant. 3 weeks had passed since the Galactic Council rejected Earth's military partnership application. 3 weeks since the Krell Dominion launched their invasion. 3 weeks of watching Council forces fall back, system after system, against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Commander Choi Sung-ho stood in the briefing room of the UHN's Tenacity, watching the tactical display with the same expression he'd worn during Arctic survival training. Calm, focused, measuring. Around him, his officers studied the same data, their faces showing similar intensity. "They're getting hammered," Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin said, pointing to the latest battle reports. "The Council lost another 2 systems yesterday. The Krell are using pure overwhelming force. Standard doctrine for them," Choi replied. "Hit hard, advance fast, leave occupation forces to hold what they take. Their frontline troops are elite, but their garrison forces are less experienced. Sounds like an opportunity," said Sergeant Han Jae-sung from his position by the environmental controls. The man was checking seals on his Arctic-rated gear, despite being in a climate-controlled ship. Old habits from training in Earth's harshest regions never died. The door hissed open. Ambassador Park Ji-woo entered, and every soldier in the room came to attention. "At ease," Park said, moving to the display. "I just received communication from the Galactic Council. They're requesting Earth's assistance." A murmur ran through the assembled Wolverine Corps officers. "Requesting or demanding?" Choi asked. "Requesting." Park pulled up a message. Vexter himself sent it. The language was significantly more humble than 3 weeks ago. "How bad is it for them?" "Bad enough that they're willing to accept help from humans." Park's expression was neutral. "They've lost 17 colony worlds. Their casualty rates are catastrophic. The Krell are better trained and more ruthless than Council intelligence predicted." Choi nodded slowly. "What are they asking for?" "Military support units. They expect us to provide standard infantry to reinforce their defensive lines. Cannon fodder," Kim said flatly. "Probably," Park agreed. "But it's our chance to prove what we tried to tell them." "What did you tell them we'd send?" Choi asked. Park smiled thinly. "I told them Earth would deploy specialized forces suited to unconventional operations. I didn't specify what kind. The Wolverine Corps. All 4 battalions, if you're willing." Park looked at each officer in turn. "This is voluntary, Commander. I won't order Earth soldiers into a fight where we're expected to fail." Choi glanced at his team. Kim nodded immediately. Han grinned. The other officers showed similar enthusiasm. "Ma'am, with respect, we've been training for this since the Corps was founded," Choi said. "We've studied every predator on Earth. We've survived conditions that would kill most species in the galaxy. We've learned from the Wolverine. Never quit, never surrender, never stop hunting. Then you're accepting?" "We're going to show them what humans learn from living on a death world," Choi said. "We're going to show them what real persistence looks like." The deployment took 48 hours. The Council provided transport, but their quartermasters looked confused when the Wolverine Corps arrived with their equipment. "Where are your heavy weapons?" asked the Thaxian logistics officer, staring at the humans' gear. "Your armor plating? Your siege equipment?" "Don't need it," Kim replied cheerfully, adjusting the straps on her lightweight combat rig. "We're not here for siege warfare." "Then what? We hunt." Han interrupted, hefting a pack that should have been too heavy for someone his size, but which he carried with practiced ease. "We track. We pursue. We never stop." The logistics officer looked at Captain Kang, who had accompanied the Corps as military liaison. "I don't understand," the Thaxian said. "These supplies, this equipment, this is for endurance operations, not combat." "Exactly," Kang said. "You'll understand soon enough." They assigned the Wolverine Corps to Talos 4, a recently occupied world where Krell garrison forces had dug in after their frontline troops advanced deeper into Council territory. Council Command considered it a lost cause. The garrison was too strong to dislodge without massive casualties. Perfect, Choi said when he reviewed the tactical data. A static enemy in unfamiliar terrain. They also assigned an observer, Officer Then, a reptilian from a species known for their military prowess. Then's job was to evaluate human performance and report back to the council. Then met Choi on the transport down to Talus 4. "Commander," Then said, his scales rippling with what might have been concern, "I've reviewed your force composition. You have 400 soldiers against an estimated 20,000 Krell occupiers. The odds are irrelevant," Choi finished. "Officer Then, do you know what a wolverine is?" "The creature your unit is named after, yes." I reviewed the files. A small Earth predator. A small Earth predator that routinely drives off bears 50 times its size, Choi corrected. It does this through sheer aggression and refusal to back down. It marks territory and defends it against anything. It can travel 40 kilometers a day hunting. It never gives up. That's an animal, Commander. We're discussing modern warfare, Choi smiled. We are animals, Officer Then. Persistent predators from a death world. We evolved to hunt by running prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Our ancestors would chase antelope for days until the animal literally couldn't run anymore. That trait didn't disappear. We just refined it. Then's scales shifted colors, indicating confusion. You plan to outrun the Krell? We plan to outlast them. Choi turned to the viewport, where Talus IV grew larger. The Krell are strong, well-armed, and numerous. But they're not from a death world. They didn't evolve to keep going when everything says stop. They don't have our endurance. I still don't see how. You will, Choi promised. Just try to keep up. The Wolverine Corps inserted under cover of darkness, splitting into 4-person teams that vanished into Talus IV's wilderness within minutes of touchdown. Council observers tracking their biosigns reported confusion. They're spreading out, one observer reported to Then, moving away from Krell positions. This makes no tactical sense. They're hunting, Then said, beginning to understand. They're not engaging the enemy. They're studying them first. For 3 days, nothing happened. Krell forces maintained their positions. Council Command grew impatient. Then the attacks began. A supply convoy disappeared on the road between 2 Krell bases. No distress call. No signs of battle. Just gone. An observation post went silent. When reinforcements arrived, they found the post empty, equipment intact, soldiers vanished. A patrol failed to report in. Search teams found their transport abandoned in a ravine. Krell Commander Jacqueron stared at the reports with growing unease. What's happening? He demanded of his intelligence officer. Where are these humans? Unknown, Commander. We've detected no major troop movements, no staging areas. It's as if they're ghosts. Send hunter teams. Track them down. The hunter teams deployed at dawn. They were Krell elite soldiers, trained in pursuit and capture. They found nothing. Instead, 2 days later, 100 teams stumbled back to base, exhausted and terrified. They hunted us, the team leader gasped. We tracked human signs for 30 hours. Then we realized the signs were leading us in circles. They were behind us the whole time. They watched us tire ourselves out. Then they ambushed us. And, Jacqueron demanded, they destroyed our equipment and supplies. Then they vanished. We had to walk back. 40 kilometers. They followed us the whole way, staying just out of sight. Every time we stopped to rest, we'd find marks carved in trees. Claw marks. Jacqueron pulled up surveillance data from orbital platforms. The images showed heat signatures moving through Talus to Force Wilderness, never stopping, always in motion. Small groups that appeared, struck, and disappeared. How long have they been moving? Continuously, Commander. For 6 days straight, They don't stop. Impossible. No species can operate for 6 days without rest. But the data didn't lie. The humans were out there, moving through terrain that should have exhausted them, striking with precision and vanishing before Krell reinforcements could respond. What are they? Jackaron whispered. On his assigned patrol with Kim's team, Officer Then was learning the answer to that question firsthand. They had been moving for 72 hours with minimal rest, and Then was barely keeping pace, despite his species' reputation for endurance. How? He gasped as they climbed another ridge. How are you still moving? Kim grinned back at him. This is what we do, officer. On Earth, humans used to hunt by persistence. We'd chase animals until they collapsed. We're just doing what comes naturally. But the terrain, the distance. We trained in worse, one of Kim's team members said. Arctic operations, desert survival, mountain warfare. This is mild. They crested the ridge. Below, a Krell supply depot sat unaware. Target acquired. Kim whispered into her com. Beginning observation. We'll hit them in 36 hours. 36 hours? Then asked. Why wait? Because they'll be tired by then, Kim explained. We'll watch them, learn their patterns, wait until they're at their weakest. Then we strike. That's how Wolverines hunt. Patience and persistence. Then watch these small humans, each carrying heavy packs, having moved for 3 days straight through hostile terrain, preparing to wait another 36 hours before attacking an enemy that outnumbered them 50-1. And he understood, finally, what the Galactic Council had failed to grasp. Krell Commander Jackaron hadn't slept properly in 9 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined human soldiers watching from the darkness, waiting with inexhaustible patience for him to lower his guard. The reports kept coming, each one worse than the last. Another convoy lost, his aide reported, mandibles clicking nervously. Third one this week. Same pattern. Ambushed in remote terrain, supplies taken or destroyed, vehicles disabled. By the time our quick response teams arrive, the humans are gone. How many humans? Tracks indicate 4 to 6 individuals per attack. Jackaron slammed his fist on the tactical display. 4 to 6? We're losing supply lines to teams smaller than a standard patrol. Yes, Commander. The aide hesitated. There's more. Observation Post 7 went silent last night. We sent a platoon to investigate, and the post was empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. But every piece of equipment was sabotaged. Precisely, methodically destroyed. And they left a message. The aide activated a video feed. Jackaron stared at the words carved into the post metal wall. We never stop. They're playing psychological games. Jackaron said, trying to sound confident. Trying to make us afraid. It's working, Commander. The aide's voice dropped. The troops are calling them the relentless ones. They say the humans don't sleep, don't tire, don't ever quit hunting. Superstitious nonsense. Is it? The aide pulled up biosign tracking data. Our orbital scans show human teams operating continuously for 12 days now. 12 days, Commander. They should be dead from exhaustion, but they're still out there, still moving, still attacking. Jackaron studied the data. The heat signatures of human teams crisscrossed HFY's surface like a web, never stopping, always in motion. Even as he watched, one team covered another 15 kilometers through mountain terrain. What are they? He muttered. In the wilderness, 70 kilometers from the nearest Krell base, Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin and her team prepared for their next operation. Officer Then sat against a tree, his scales dull with exhaustion. He had been with Kim's team for 14 days, and it felt like 14 years. How do you do this? Then asked as Kim checked her equipment with the same methodical precision she'd shown on day 1. 14 days of continuous operations. My species is renowned for endurance, but I can barely function. You act like this is normal, Kim smiled. It is normal. For us, anyway. She gestured to her team, who were eating rations and reviewing maps. We trained for this. Arctic missions where we move for weeks at a time. Desert operations where stopping meant dying. We learned from Earth's persistent predators. The wolverines, Fenn said. He'd heard the comparison a dozen times now. And others. Wolves that track prey for days. African wild dogs that chase until their target collapses. Humans, Kim sat beside him. Officer Fenn, do you know how our ancestors hunted before we had weapons? No, persistence hunting. We'd find an antelope or deer in the heat of the day. Then we'd chase it. The animal would run, fast and far, but it would have to stop to cool down. We wouldn't. We'd keep jogging after it, hour after hour. The animal would run again, stop again. We'd keep coming. Eventually, after hours or even days, the animal would be so exhausted it couldn't run anymore. Then we'd walk up and kill it. That's horrifying, Fenn said quietly. That's survival on a death world, Kim corrected. Earth made us into endurance specialists. We sweat to cool down while moving. We can digest calories on the move. We can shut down non-essential functions and keep going when any sane creature would collapse. It's not magic, Officer Fenn. It's evolution. She stood, shouldering her pack. And now we're hunting the crow the same way our ancestors hunted antelope, relentlessly, without stopping. Until they break. Target is moving, one of Kim's scouts reported. Krell Patrol, 20 soldiers, heading northwest. Kim checked her tactical display. They're rotating to the garrison at Hill 347. That puts them in the Broken Valley Pass around sunset. Perfect ambush terrain. Her second-in-command noted. Too obvious. They'll be watching for it. Kim studied the map. We'll let them pass through. Then we'll follow them. For 3 days? 3 days? Fenn stood. Why follow for 3 days without engaging? Because after 3 days of knowing we're behind them, never stopping, never giving up, they'll be exhausted and terrified. Kim explained. Fear is as useful as bullets, Officer Fenn. Maybe more useful. She was right. The Krell Patrol detected human pursuers on the second day. They tried to shake them. Fast march, doubling back, setting ambushes. Nothing worked. The humans stayed behind them, always just out of range, never stopping. The Krell pushed themselves, covering ground at maximum speed. On the third day, the Krell were stumbling with exhaustion. Their leader finally called for transport evacuation. Abandoning the patrol route entirely, Kim's team watched the transport leave, then moved to their next target. You didn't even attack them, Fenn said. Incredulous. Didn't need to, Kim replied. We removed a 20-soldier patrol from the field without firing a shot. They're too exhausted to patrol again for days. And they'll tell everyone about the humans who chased them for 72 hours without stopping. That fear spreads across Talos 4, the same pattern repeated. Sergeant Han Jae-sung's team executed a 12-day operation, circling a major Krell supply hub and picking off every scouting patrol sent to find them. The Krell garrison grew increasingly isolated, afraid to send out patrols that never returned. Another team, led by Captain Nam De-yoon, spent 18 days sabotaging Krell equipment. Not destroying it that would have been too obvious. Instead, they made tiny changes, loosening bolts that would fail under stress, corrupting navigation data, contaminating fuel supplies with compounds that would cause failures days later. The Krell never knew what would break next. Commander Choi coordinated from a mobile command post that relocated every 6 hours. He reviewed reports from all teams, noting patterns. They're breaking, he told Ambassador Park over encrypted comm. Not from battlefield defeats, from exhaustion and fear. They can't cope with an enemy that never stops. The Council is noticing, Park replied. They're asking how we maintain operational tempo. They can't believe you've been in continuous operation for 3 weeks. Tell them we learned from the best teachers. Earth's predators. Choi pulled up a video file. And show them this. The video showed a wolverine in Earth's Arctic, pursuing a caribou 5 times its size. The caribou ran. The wolverine followed. The caribou ran again. The wolverine kept coming. For 3 hours, the pattern repeated, until the exhausted caribou could barely stand. The wolverine took it down through sheer refusal to quit. That's us, Choi said. That's what we're doing to the crow. We're not stronger. We're not faster. But we never ever stop in the Galactic Council chamber. Counselor Vexter watched combat footage with growing disbelief. The humans weren't fighting conventional battles. They were conducting a campaign of relentless pursuit that was destroying Krell morale. This is impossible, he said to his military advisors. They've been operating continuously for 23 days. Sentient beings cannot maintain this pace. Humans can, Dr. Lee Hyjin said. She'd been brought in to explain Earth biology to the Council. Our evolution on a high-gravity death world created exceptional endurance. We can operate for weeks with minimal rest. We sweat to cool our bodies while moving. We can consume and digest food on the march. We're persistence predators, Counselor. It's literally what we evolved to do. She showed them more footage of Earth predators. Wolves running down elk. African wild dogs chasing wildebeest. Humans jogging after prey until it collapsed. You asked what qualifies Earth for military partnership, Lee continued. This does. Not our strength or size, but our capacity for relentless pursuit. The Krell are learning what happens when they face an enemy that simply will not stop. Ever. Back on Talos 4, Jackaron made a desperate decision. He would commit his entire garrison, 8,000 troops, to a massive sweep. Operation to eliminate the human teams. The humans detected the mobilization within hours. They're coming for us? Kim reported to Choi. All of them? Good, Choi replied. How long can we stay ahead of them? In this terrain? Indefinitely. Then let's give them a chase they'll never forget. For 9 days. 8,000 Krell troops pursued 400 humans through Talos the Fourth's wilderness. The humans stayed ahead, sometimes by minutes, leaving just enough trail to keep the Krell following. They led them through ravines, across rivers, over mountains. The Krell pushed harder, determined to catch these infuriating humans. The humans simply kept going. On day 6, Krell soldiers began collapsing from exhaustion. On day 7, units started abandoning the chase. By day 9, the entire operation fell apart as demoralized. Exhausted Krell troops limped back to base. The humans hadn't fired a single shot. Jackaron watched his army return in defeat and understood finally what he was facing. These weren't soldiers in any conventional sense. They were hunters, predators, and they had turned his entire garrison into prey. That night, he sent a message to Krell High Command. Request immediate withdrawal from Talos 4. Enemy forces have broken our operational capability through sustained psychological warfare. Recommend designating humans as Category 7 threat. Persistence predators. He attached one image. A wolverine, teeth bared, standing over prey 10 times its size. 6 weeks into the Talos the Fourth deployment, Krell High Command was receiving reports that made no tactical sense. A garrison of 20,000 troops was being systematically destroyed, not through combat, but through complete psychological collapse. Explain this, High Commander Krellex demanded, reviewing the casualty reports. We've lost fewer than 200 soldiers to direct combat, but nearly 3,000 have been evacuated for psychological trauma. Another 5,000 are combat ineffective due to exhaustion. What's happening down there? Jacqueron appeared via holographic link, and Krellex barely recognized him. The commander looked haggard, his carapace dull, his movements jerky with fatigue. "The humans, sir," Jacqueron said simply. "They're destroying us without fighting. That's impossible." "I thought so too." Jacqueron pulled up tactical data. But watch this. The hologram showed time-lapse surveillance of Talos 4 over 42 days. Krell positions appeared in red, slowly dimming and winking out. Human team signatures appeared in blue, constant streams of movement that never stopped, never slowed, circling Krell positions like sharks around wounded prey. "They never rest," Jacqueron continued. "Every time we send out patrols, the humans track them. Every time we try to resupply, they ambush the convoys. Every time we attempt to sleep, they attack. Not major assaults, just enough to keep us awake, keep us afraid, keep us exhausted, then eliminate them. We've tried." Jacqueron's voice cracked slightly. "We sent hunter teams, the humans hunted them instead. We deployed tracker units. They led our troops on week-long chases that left our soldiers broken. We set ambushes. The humans detected them and waited until our troops were too tired to maintain position. Sir, we are fighting an enemy that operates continuously for weeks without degradation. They don't stop. All species need rest. Not like these humans." Jacqueron transmitted biosign data. "Council observers are tracking them. Teams have been operational for over 40 days with minimal rest periods. They eat while moving. They sleep in shifts of 2 hours while still maintaining defensive positions. They cover 50 kilometers a day through hostile terrain like it's nothing. This isn't normal, sir." "They're not normal." In the Wolverine Coursefield command post, Commander Choi reviewed the same data from a different perspective. Officer Then sat across from him, no longer the skeptical observer, but a convert to the human approach. "Your assessment, officer?" Choi asked. "The Krell garrison is on the verge of collapse," Then said. "Not from military defeat, but from cumulative exhaustion and terror. They call your soldiers the relentless ones now. It's become psychological warfare as much as physical." "Good." Choi marked several positions on the tactical map. "Then we escalate. We're going after their main supply depot, the one supporting their entire occupation force." Then studied the target. "Commander, that facility has 8,000 defenders. Hardened positions. Automated defenses. Your entire force is 400 soldiers. We're not assaulting it," Choi explained. "We're besieging it. Wolverine style. Over the next 3 weeks, the Wolverine Corps demonstrated what a siege meant to persistent predators. They didn't surround the depot or cut it off. That would have required numbers they didn't have. Instead, they made it too expensive to operate. Supply runs to the depot came under constant harassment. Not full attacks, just enough to make every convoy a nightmare. Convoys would be tracked for days, attacked at the worst possible moments, then pursued even after they reached the depot. Krell drivers began refusing assignments. Patrol routes around the depot became death traps. Not because the humans killed every patrol, but because they chased them. Lieutenant Kim's team once pursued a Krell patrol for 6 days straight, never attacking, just following. The patrol finally radioed for emergency extraction. The soldiers too terrified and exhausted to continue. Automated defenses were bypassed through patience. Sergeant Han Jae-sung's team spent 12 days mapping sensor patterns, then another 8 days testing responses. They eventually created paths through the defense network that took 20 hours to traverse, requiring absolute precision and timing. They used these paths not to attack, but to prove they could enter the depot perimeter whenever they wanted. The psychological impact on the defenders was devastating. "They're inside the wire," one Krell defender reported to his commander. "We found markers. Human markers. They were here, inside our defenses, and we never detected them. When? We don't know. Could have been last night. Could have been last week. They don't leave traces except when they want us to know they were here. The depot commander increased patrols, which exhausted his troops further. He activated more defenses, which depleted power reserves. He requested more supplies, which meant more convoys for the humans to hunt. The siege consumed resources without a single major battle. In orbit. The council observers watched in fascination and horror. Ambassador Park had joined them to witness the operation. "This is remarkable," one observer said, "and terrifying. Your soldiers have been operating for 63 days with only minimal rest." "How? We're persistence predators," Park replied. "Earth's evolution made us this way. When you grow up on a world where stopping means dying, you learn not to stop." She showed them footage from Earth. Endurance runners covering hundreds of kilometers in single runs. Soldiers training in conditions that would kill most species. Humans surviving in environments that were actively hostile to life. "The Krell are strong," Park continued, "but they're not from a death world. They don't have our endurance. They've never faced an enemy that simply refuses to quit, no matter what. Down on Talos 4, the depot was dying. Not from damage, but from dysfunction. Soldiers were too exhausted to maintain equipment. Officers were making mistakes from sleep deprivation. Supply levels dropped as convoys failed to arrive. Morale collapsed as troops realized the humans would never stop. Never leave, never quit hunting them. After 21 days of siege, the depot commander sent a message to Jacqueron. Request permission to abandon facility. Garrison combat effectiveness below 20%. Troops are broken, sir. Not beaten in battle, just broken. They can't take it anymore. Jacqueron authorized the withdrawal. He had no choice. When Krell forces evacuated the depot, Wolverine Corps teams watched from the surrounding hills. They didn't attack the retreating convoy. They didn't need to. "Sir," one of Kim's soldiers asked, "why are we letting them go?" "Because they're already defeated," Kim replied. "Look at them." Through their scopes, they watched Krell's soldiers stumbling onto transports, their movements sluggish with exhaustion and defeat. These were troops who had entered Talos 4 as a confident occupation force. Now they fled like prey running from predators. "They'll spread the word," Kim continued. "They'll tell every Krell unit they encounter about the humans who never stop. That fear will do more damage than bullets ever could." She was right. Within days, reports from across the front lines indicated Krell forces were withdrawing from Council territories. Not because they were losing battles, but because word had spread. The humans were coming. The relentless ones. The predators that never stopped. High Commander Krellax watched his invasion collapse and understood that he had made a fundamental miscalculation. He had measured the enemy by size and strength, ignoring the most dangerous quality, will. "Recall all forces from Council space," he ordered. "Designate humanity as persistence predator threat level. All units are to avoid engagement with human forces unless absolutely necessary." "Sir?" his aide asked, confused. "We haven't lost any major battles. We still outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Numbers don't matter against an enemy that won't stop," Krellax replied. "The humans proved that. They'll chase us forever, harass us endlessly, give us no rest and no peace. We cannot win a war against an enemy that refuses to quit, no matter the cost." He looked at the tactical display showing human team movements on Talos 4. Those constant blue lines that never stopped moving. "They're not soldiers in any conventional sense," he said quietly. "They're hunters. And they've made us their prey." In the Galactic Council chamber, Councilor Vexter received the news of Krell withdrawal with stunned silence. The entire invasion, which had seemed unstoppable 6 weeks ago, was collapsing. Not from military defeat, but from the actions of 400 human soldiers. 400 soldiers who had broken an army of tens of thousands through sheer refusal to stop. "Bring me Ambassador Park," Vexter ordered. "And Commander Choi. I believe we owe them an apology on Talos 4. Commander Choi stood on a hill overlooking the abandoned Krell depot. His soldiers, tired but unbroken after 65 days of continuous operations, gathered around him. "The council wants us back for a ceremony," Choi told them. "Recognition for our service. What do we tell them, sir?" Han asked. Choi smiled. "We tell them what we've been saying all along. Size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. The refusal to quit, that's what wins wars." He looked at his troops. These humans who had learned from Earth's most relentless predators and embodied their spirit. "We tell them about wolverines," Choi continued. "How a 15-kilogram animal drives off bears, defends its territory against anything, never surrenders no matter the odds. We tell them that's not just an animal trait, it's a human trait. It's what we are." The soldiers nodded, understanding they were the Wolverine Corps. 3 months after the Krell withdrawal, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different than the day Earth had requested military partnership. The same tiered seating, the same artificial stars overhead, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Where there had been mockery and dismissal, there was now silence and respect. Ambassador Park Ji-woo stood at the presentation platform again, but this time she wasn't alone. Commander Choi Sung-ho stood beside her in full Wolverine Corps dress uniform, the unit insignia, a snarling wolverine prominent on his shoulder. Behind them, Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin and Sergeant Han Jae-sung represented the 400 soldiers who had changed galactic military doctrine forever. "Counselor." Vexter rose to speak, his movements careful and deliberate. The arrogance was gone. "Ambassador Park, Commander Choi," Vexter began. 3 months ago, this council rejected Earth's application for military partnership. We did so based on measurements of physical strength, technological capability, and size. We were wrong. The admission hung in the air. Other counselors nodded, a ripple of agreement through the chamber. "Your Wolverine Corps defeated an enemy force 50 times its size without winning a single conventional battle," Vexter continued. "You achieved what our combined militaries could not. You drove the Krell Dominion from Council space entirely, not through superior firepower, but through superior will." He gestured. And holographic displays showed footage from Talos 4, human teams moving endlessly through wilderness, pursuing Krell patrols until they broke, maintaining operations for weeks that should have been impossible. "We failed to understand what you tried to tell us," Vexter said. "That predators are not measured in kilograms or firepower, but in determination. That Earth's harsh environment created not just survivors, but persistence hunters. That humanity embodies these traits." Park inclined her head graciously. "The council had no reason to believe us without proof. We provided that proof, at significant cost," another counselor noted. "Your soldiers operated continuously for over 60 days. The physical toll must have been immense." Commander Choi stepped forward. "With respect, Counselor, that's standard for Wolverine Corps operations. We train in Earth's Arctic for months at a time, in deserts where temperatures exceed 50 degrees, in mountains where the air barely supports life. 60 days of operations on Talos 4 was challenging, but well within our capabilities. Impossible," muttered a counselor from the Thax Collective. "For most species." "Yes," Dr. Lee Hai-jin said, joining the humans at the platform. "But not for persistence predators from a death world." "May I explain?" Vexter gestured permission, and Lee activated a biological presentation. Humans evolved on a planet with high gravity, extreme climate variations, and numerous predator species. To survive, we developed exceptional endurance. Our sweat-based cooling system allows us to regulate temperature while moving. Our digestive efficiency lets us process food on the march. Our psychological resilience allows us to continue functioning when exhaustion would stop most species. These aren't superhuman abilities. They're standard human biology. She showed comparative data, human endurance metrics versus other galactic species. The numbers were stark. Humans could operate 3 to 5 times longer than most species before requiring rest. But biology alone doesn't explain what happened on Talos 4, Lee continued. That requires understanding Earth's apex predators. The wolverine, for instance. The hologram shifted to show a wolverine defending a kill from a grizzly bear 10 times its size. Pound for pound, wolverines are among Earth's most formidable predators. They don't rely on size or strength. They rely on aggression, territoriality, and absolute refusal to back down. They'll fight anything, chase anything, outlast anything. This isn't recklessness. It's a survival strategy refined over millions of years. She looked at the council. Humanity learned from these animals. We studied them. We adopted their strategies. The Wolverine Corps embodies this philosophy. Size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. The refusal to quit matters most. And it works, Vexter said quietly. The Krell Dominion has designated humanity as a Category 7 persistence predator threat. They've issued standing orders to avoid engagement with human forces. An empire that has conquered hundreds of worlds is now afraid of Earth. They should be, Choi said simply, because we don't stop. Ever. The council chamber fell silent, digesting this statement. Which brings us to today's vote, Vexter announced. The council will now consider Earth's application for military partnership. All in favor? Every councilor raised their assent. Not a single dissenting voice. Earth is granted full military partnership status within the Galactic Council, Vexter declared. Furthermore, humanity is designated as the Council's persistence warfare specialists. Commander Choi, your Wolverine Corps will serve as the foundation for a new multi-species unit trained in human endurance tactics, Choi nodded. We accept, Counselor. With conditions? Conditions? Vexter's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. We train them our way, Choi said firmly. Arctic operations. Desert survival. Mountain warfare. They learn what it means to be a persistence predator, or they don't earn the designation. Agreed. I'm assigning officers then to coordinate with your training program. Then, watching from the observation area, stood and saluted. The reptilian officer had spent 2 months with the Wolverine Corps and had emerged changed. Leaner and harder, but also understanding what humans meant by persistence. It will be my honor. Commander, then said Park stepped forward. The council should understand. This isn't just about military tactics. This is a fundamental shift in how you think about warfare. Most species fight until victory or defeat. Humans fight until we win or there's nothing left to fight for. That's not hyperbole, it's evolutionary reality. She activated footage from Earth's history. Human explorers crossing frozen continents, climbers summiting deadly peaks, survivors enduring impossible situations through sheer refusal to die. Earth created us through hardship, Park continued. Every disaster, every ice age, every threat made us more persistent. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest or the fastest. But we're the ones who won't stop. That makes us dangerous allies and terrifying enemies. Which is why we're honored to have Earth as our ally, Vexter said. And why we're establishing the Galactic Persistence Warfare Academy on Earth. Your world, your environment, will train the next generation of multi-species endurance warriors. 3 years later, the Academy had graduated its first class. Commander Choi stood on a glacial field in Earth's Arctic. watching mixed species teams complete their final qualification. A 2-week endurance march across some of Earth's harshest terrain. Lieutenant Kim supervised from a mobile command post, tracking the team's progress. The Thaxian team just completed the mountain segment, she reported. They're exhausted but functional. The Vrax team is struggling. Their biology isn't suited for cold, but they're adapting. The mixed human Then team is ahead of schedule, Choi smiled. How's Then doing? Leading from the front, sir. He's become almost as stubborn as we are. Officer Then had indeed transformed. After his time with the Wolverine Corps, he'd volunteered to be the first non-human to complete the full training program. It had nearly broken him, but he'd succeeded. Now he taught other species what he'd learned. That persistence mattered more than power. The graduation ceremony took place on a windswept plateau. 47 graduates from 12 different species stood at attention. Wearing the Wolverine Corps' insignia, they'd earned through months of the hardest training the galaxy had ever seen. Park addressed them, her breath visible in the cold air. 3 years ago, the Galactic Council mocked Earth's predators, she said. They looked at animals like the wolverine and saw weakness. Small size, limited strength. They failed to see the real threat. Absolute refusal to surrender. She walked along the line of graduates. You've learned what that means. You've operated in temperatures that would kill most species. You've marched for weeks through terrain designed to break you. You've discovered that your body's limits are far beyond what you thought possible. You've learned to persist. She stopped at the center of the formation. You're no longer bound by your species' traditional limitations. You're persistent predators now. When you deploy, enemies won't face conventional soldiers. They'll face hunters who never stop, never quit, never surrender. That's what the Wolverine taught us. That's what you've become. Choi stepped forward. Final lesson, he said. Never forget where this philosophy came from. Earth's predators survived, not by being the biggest or strongest, but by refusing to give up. The Wolverine drives off bears. The human chases prey until it collapses. These aren't just tactics. They're proof that what matters more than size. He raised his voice. When you face impossible odds, remember, Wolverines don't check the size of their opponents before fighting. They just fight. When you're exhausted and want to quit, remember, persistence predators don't stop when they're tired. They stop when they win. That's who you are now. That's what the galaxy learned to fear. The graduates saluted, and Choi saw in their eyes what he'd seen in his own soldiers on Talos 4. The understanding that they were no longer ordinary troops. They were something new. Something